Greetings, this is Molly Fiore with Peaks of Excellence, and I want to talk today about a new concept, something I had never heard of before called anti-fragile. Listening to Steve Chandler talk and brought up a new way of being that radically shifted things for me. So growing up, I thought that there was two camps, the fragile camp and the resilient camp. And man, this is the camp that I was in when I was little, when I so wanted to be in this camp. So what that looked like for me is I got my feelings hurt all the time. It seemed like anything. So here was a world and that I was being called thin-skinned, too sensitive. I felt like I didn't have any skin at all. Things would just come shooting right in, and not the message of how I was getting to be in the world. I heard constantly like, suck it up, and the role models that I had seemed like things weren't impacting them, that they weren't taking things personal. They just seemed super resilient, so that things would come up and they just didn't seem to be bothered by it. So Steve Chandler was explaining fragile is like mailing, chances are it's going to get broken, that any kind of dropping or anything's not going to be good. So you need to mark all over it, fragile, like handle with care, be super careful with it so that it doesn't get broken and shattered. I felt like that in the world, like handle with caution, be really careful with me because I feel like I'm getting shattered on the inside all the time. Whereas resilient would be like mailing a bowling ball, such that, man, it doesn't matter. You can drop this thing and it's going to be rock solid. It's not going to shift. So I thought this whole time it was about me showing up as fragile, but how could I be more resilient? How could I be more like that bowling ball so life isn't shattering me all the time? Never quite camp, which life was just felt excruciating and painful, or I was pretending to be in the resilient camp, which I really wasn't. All fine, not bothered by this at all, but inside I was super bothered by it. Until this third camp called anti-fragile. And what if there was a way of being such that you could show up, be who you are naturally, yet benefit from it? So it's like the piece of glass actually gets stronger as it's out there being shipped, so such that every time this piece of glass gets dropped on the ground, it actually gets harder and gets better. So the example that Steve Chandler used that I thought was brilliant was like a candle. A candle in the wind, kind of fragile, such that any little puff of wind and the light goes out. I could totally relate to that. I felt like the world kept extinguishing my candle flame, whereas resilient was learning how could I be in the world such that my candle isn't getting blown out all the time. But the anti-fragile is more like a forest fire, such that the forest fire actually feeds on the wind. So the wind isn't just something to be blocked or how to navigate it or how to manage it, but actually thriving from it. So what could that be like in the world if I wasn't in the fragile or resilient camp, but now in the anti-fragile? Well, what it looked like for me was turning the thing that I felt was the worst quality for myself. The thing that I really did not like about myself was I'm too sensitive. And I thought, like, hey, if I could just toughen up, get thick skin, but that seemed to not be happening. So how could I use that being sensitive? How could I turn that the wind of blowing out my candle to more like a forest fire? How could I create that wind as fuel? Well, it would be, hey, adopt a learning orientation to life, such that I'm going to use everything, every little wind gust to my advantage to learn from it. And then just like that, with that perspective, all of a sudden my biggest problem of being too sensitive, all of a sudden a blessing, such that if I'm going to use things for healing, I want to know how I feel inside. Using my feelings, being super sensitive is like having a magnifying glass on my feelings. Brilliant for learning. Use that feeling to see, hey, what's this all about? And then those upsets I can heal, then evolving and growing from that opportunity, as opposed to just suffering from it. So just like that, candle, having the wind blow that candle out has switched to now this is my fuel, such that anything that shows up in life, hey, I can use my sensitivity to really learn and grow from it. Love to hear your thoughts, mollyfemail.com, or check me out, mollyfiore.com. Love to hear from you. Thank you.